Hey everyone, and welcome back to Disgustingly Easy, the private pod for those who want results for the long game. I am your host, Beck Cameron, and I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, the incredible Lauren Jadehall. Lauren is a first-time mum navigating the journey of motherhood with such authenticity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. She's also living with ADHD, and on top of that, stepping powerfully into the sober curious space. Her mission is to create safe, real, and empowering community for mums who are questioning, reevaluating, or redefining their relationship with alcohol. In our conversation today, we're going to dive deep into why Lauren began exploring sobriety and what it's revealed about motherhood, identity, habits, self-worth, how neurodivergence, ADHD specifically, shows up in her story, and how it intersects with motherhood culture and the pressures to keep up, especially in Aussie drinking culture, the emotional, physical, and social implications of choosing sobriety or choosing to simply question the status quo, and the work Lauren is embarking upon with sober curious mums and why now is such a potent time for that. We're also going to finish up with some practical takeaways for anyone tuning in, whether you're sober curious, you're supporting someone who is, or you're just craving a new framework for wellness, community, and real connection. This episode is for the mums who tell themselves just one more glass, despite knowing that it feels unaligned. It's for the mums who've maybe toyed with sobriety but feel the pull of social expectation, or the mum who's kind of done with that mummy wine time drinking culture and ready for something different. Lauren's story is honest. It's feminist aligned, and we're going to lean into the edge of discomfort, growth, and possibility together. So grab your drink of choice, no judgment, whatever you need, and let's jump in. Lauren, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. My God, that was a epic introduction, my love. Holy shit, that was so good.
You're so welcome. You've been so honest on Instagram about your personal growth and self-discovery and the journey. When you look back, what was the moment or the feeling or the experience that made you think, fuck, like something really needs to change?
So this has been something that I have been trying to do for a really long time. And when I say trying to do, I guess it started years ago before I even was pregnant with my daughter. There were nights that I would drink and I would always just think to myself, I just really don't want to have a drink, but I just couldn't not have a drink. And so that was probably 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And I didn't really know like what it was in terms of like, do I want to be sober? I was too scared. I was way too scared to be sober. And I knew I was relying on it. I was so self-aware. I was so aware that I was relying on it, but I couldn't stop drinking regularly. And everything changed when I fell pregnant with my daughter. And I remember when she was born, I think it was like she was 3 weeks old. Me and my partner went to a winery for lunch. I had like 1 or 2 glasses of wine. And she was formula fed, by the way. Not that that really matters, but just for context. And it was really lovely. Like it was a beautiful lunch and I had a glass of wine and it was great. But I remember feeling really weird after I had a drink and I had this baby. I was like, I hadn't drunk for 9 months and I had one glass and I felt a little bit like, whoa. And I was, she was just this little thing in this pram. And I remember thinking, this is weird. Like feels really weird to me to feel a bit buzzy and have this baby with me. And as the weeks went on, I had a drink here and there at home, glass of wine here and there. And it would only take me 2 glasses of wine before I felt the effects of, being drunk. I wasn't drunk, but being tipsy. And it was a really weird feeling because I had to get up and feed my baby, look after my baby. And I would look at my baby and love her, but I was tipsy. And I was like, this is weird to me. It didn't sit right with me. Throughout my pregnancy, first kind of 3 months of postpartum, I was also on this journey of really wanting to start my own business. And I just was really searching for something else. Like I've always known there's something bigger that I should be doing. And so I was on this self-discovery journey of trying to figure out my purpose. And so through that, I decided I think I need to stop drinking to give myself something that's really difficult for me to do, but to prove to myself that I can do something difficult so that I can continue to do what I see as difficult things in order of my self-discovery and my journey. And I decided to be sober and I actually hired a coach to assist me with that. And it was like a 12-week Sobriety. She's a counselor, psychologist. She was a sober coach. That was incredible to have that accountability. And then from there, I just got really interested in what sober curious meant and how that falls in this grand scheme of sobriety and being sober. Because for a lot of people, they think I'm either sober or I'm not sober.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't like that there hasn't been this part in the middle where I'm just trying to be sober. I'm curious about sobriety. I'm trying to make intentional decisions and changes. Where do I fit? And I think that that's this really nice spot in between.
I really identify with that sense of feeling weird. I used to not be a big drinker. Like I've had a fluctuating relationship with alcohol throughout my life, which is, you know, reflecting on that in the context of a neurodivergent diagnosis, a lot of things make a lot
Mm,
more sense. But we also used to smoke a lot of weed when I was younger, when I was in my 20s. And
mm,
I totally understand what you mean. That idea of looking at your baby and feeling weird. I think for me, what it sounds like you're describing is like this discomfort with that slight sense of dissociation that comes with being a little bit tipsy or being a little bit stoned. And it's like it starts to kind of challenge your mindset around, well, before having a baby, these things are kind of meaningless. And the only person you're responsible for is yourself. But then, and I have a lot of friends who kept drinking, who kept smoking and were entirely comfortable with that, and no judgment on them. Like everyone is entitled to their own choices. But I absolutely agree. Like for me, being slightly tipsy around my baby was such an uncomfortable feeling. And I think maybe it speaks to even like a loss of control and not feeling entirely in control of the situation.
yes. This you mentioned is 100% what it was. You've really hit the nail on the head
Yeah.
because as you might know, when I'm sure everybody's different and has had a different experience, but I will black out when I drink a lot. And by blackout, I mean, I'll just forget everything.
Yeah.
And I have a terrible memory. And when I was diagnosed with ADHD, the biggest thing was I just can't remember lots. That was one of my biggest problems. And I remember thinking, as if I want to not remember my beautiful daughter as a 3-week-old baby and just all those times. And so the disassociation is exactly what it was that I think I felt uncomfortable with because it also takes you back to all of the times that you used to get drunk and party and do all those things for the most part, I mean, I don't know, 50-50 maybe, but there's been some terrible times. And then there's been some really crazy times, dangerous times when I was in those states of mind. And yeah, so that coupled with the ADHD, I have anxiety, I've had spouts of depression. And all I've ever wanted to do now since being pregnant is just feel my best. And I want to preserve my energy. I want to preserve my longevity. I want to be here for a really long time. And alcohol just doesn't align with those values.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, I had no idea what my values were before, probably like 2 years ago. I'd never even thought about what do I value in life. And yeah, it wasn't until I started doing this work that it all became very clear. And I think a lot of it had to do with the ADHD diagnosis as well, like you mentioned.
Yeah. When did you get diagnosed?
I was diagnosed, I want to say about 4 years ago. So I'm 35, 31, 32 maybe.
And what was the process leading up to that? What led you to get that diagnosis?
I've always been into self-development, love it.
Mm.
Always loved a self-help book, never read fiction, always read nonfiction. It's always been like self-help books. And, along the way, you're not really that into it. You start doing different things in life. And there was a period of time where I used to party a lot, drink, drugs, all of that. And, that was fun and great, no problem. But when I got to this age of about 30, I don't know what led me to this particular episode, but it was an episode with Dr. Huberman,
Mm.
Andrew Huberman, and it was about ADHD. And I was just listening to it in the car, and he was saying all these things. And I remember thinking, that's me. That's me. I have that. I do that. And I didn't want to self-diagnose, but I remember
Mm.
thinking, all right, okay. So I started doing some more research, listening to a lot of Dr. Huberman, and I just became fucking obsessed with brain health.
Mm.
Obsessed. And then he did an episode on alcohol in the brain and ADHD, and I just went down this rabbit hole and I was like, all right, I think I need to go speak to a psychiatrist. So I found a psychiatrist, paid an arm and a leg, went there and had this session, and he said to me at the end of it, okay, so you do have ADHD, but you actually have severe anxiety. And I said, no, I don't. I don't get anxious. And he's like, and he explains it all to me. And he said, I want to put you on this medication. And I was like, okay. Started taking this medication, and I'd never felt this calm and this quiet in my head when I started taking my medication for my anxiety. And turns out I did have really bad anxiety, but I just had no idea. I just genuinely thought the way I felt, the way I thought was just pretty normal.
Can you give us an example of what that normal felt like?
It was just chaos. Like my
Mm.
life was always, everything was so heightened. Every feeling, whether it was bad or good, I would overthink. I would think about everything constantly all day. When I would go to sleep, I couldn't sleep. My heart would race a lot in different scenarios. Everything was so rushed. I was so clumsy. I was so, late for everything. It was chaos. The only word I can think of it was just chaos. Like everything felt like a bit of a show. And then I started taking this medication, and it was just calm, no noise. My head, that noise in my head, those constant thoughts and overthinking. Yeah. I think also another thing was the relationships with people. When you have anxiety, you get quite sensitive and you overthink things, and you feel like you need so much from these people, and you feel like you're not enough, and that you need validation and you need gratification.
There's a lot of overcomplicating and overcompensating.
People pleasing type behavior.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you speak so openly about ADHD. How does that now shape your experience with alcohol and social drinking culture? And what do you feel like is the difference between your relationship with alcohol now versus prior to getting a diagnosis?
So prior to getting a diagnosis, alcohol was just, it was such a normal thing. It was so common in my group of friends
Hmm.
to sit and have a couple of bottle of wines each, smoke some ciggies, talk some shit. And that was like a very normal thing to do, every couple of nights. And then obviously you'd probably drink more on the weekend and whatever. And knowing that, I've always known that you're not meant to drink alcohol if you take medication for certain things like anxiety, depression, ADHD. I've always kind of known that as a thing, and I remember thinking, okay, now that I have this diagnosis and I've got this medication, I can't drink on it. I can't drink alcohol anymore. And I remember being really excited about it because I thought, great, this is going to be the thing that's going to help me stop drinking.
Hmm.
It didn't. And when I did drink, and I had been taking my medication, me and my partner would get into the craziest fights. I was, so angry and so vicious, and it was just a mess. It was just so messy and not nice. And, being diagnosed with ADHD felt good for me because I kind of felt like, oh, it makes sense. Okay,
Mm.
cool. Like I
Validating.
feel, it's validating. Exactly. I personally have never felt like I've gotten my medication quite right when it comes to my ADHD. Look, at the end of the day, I don't think I have ever valued myself enough to stop
Mm.
drinking. So even though I was diagnosed with ADHD and I knew all the facts, I knew all of the scientific facts and what it does to your brain and how it affects your mental health. But honestly, my relationship didn't really change with alcohol because I don't know if it's that I hadn't done all the work I needed to do. I think it's more that I really still didn't value myself and love myself enough to stop drinking for the benefit of myself.
Mm.
So unfortunately, it didn't do what I hoped it was going to do, which was to really help me stop. And that's okay. We got there in the end.
Yeah. I think so many of us have that perspective that something else outside of me, this is going to be the thing. And we see it with neurodivergence all the time. Like this new journal, this is going to be the thing that gets my fucking life in order. This new gym program, this is going to be the thing that's going to make me get healthy and fit. This food subscription is going to be the thing that makes me stop eating all the treats. And then we get the thing, I invested in a mentor and I dropped 40K from our savings, paid in full to this mentor, who I fucking love, by the way. It's been one of the best investments of my life. I made it back literally within a month. But I dropped that money and I had this massive reckoning in myself over the next week because I was like, the woman who does this, she gets up at 5 a.m. to work out and she's going to do this, 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 and this. And I got to the next day and I snoozed my alarm. And I remember thinking to myself, that's the lack of self-awareness in some situations is wild, right? I remember thinking to myself, oh, wow, it didn't make me get up. It didn't
Mm,
make me get out of bed. And then realizing, well, this is what all your clients do, Beck. They think they get it, they sign up for the long game. They think that investment is going to make me. And then we forget, like, you're the person that's going to make you. And outsourcing your power to all of these things isn't the thing that's going to make you do the thing. You have to be the person that
yeah.
goes and does the thing.
And I've always been the kind of person who's like, right, I want to organize. You know what I need to do? The house is giving me, I need to get organized. I need to go through everything. I'm going to pay someone to come and do it because I need someone to help me organize it.
Mm,
Or I want to do PT. I've got to get someone to write me a program and then I can do it. Or it's always, I need to look outward. And what I've realized and what I like to preach a lot to people is that we don't need to do more and look outward. We need to do less and look
mm-hmm,
inward.
100%.
Whilst personal trainers and coaches and all of those things are great, hello, we love them. It's not until you can really get comfortable and just sit in silence and feel like you've got this self trust, which is a
Mm-hmm,
massive thing that I talk about. You've got to have this trust within yourself that you can rely on yourself to make these particular choices and decisions.
mm-hmm,
And getting, having that ADHD medication, that's what we all want. Everyone wants a pill. Everyone wants a pill, whether it's for their ADHD or their laziness or whatever. And there's no pill. It's all about you and what you do in the moments that no one can see. And that's how you build that self-trust. Everyone wants a pill, but it's like, you know what? All you got to do is go to bed earlier, get some sunlight, move your body, eat healthy. You'll
mm-hmm.
actually start feeling really great. And none of those things cost money. We don't have to pay anyone to do anything. And everyone's like, that's boring.
Yeah, that's
You
not
know
an
what?
exciting
No,
whiz
don't be
bang.
stupid. Breathing doesn't help. Getting some
That doesn't
sunlight
give
isn't going
me
to change anything. I'm like,
But it
okay.
doesn't give you the dopamine hit. It doesn't give you the mad rush of like, oh my God, I'm going to commit and it's going to be a big deal and I'm changing my whole entire life. Like
Yeah.
it's just go to bed,
Put the phone down.
put the phone down.
Put
Yeah.
the phone down. That's it. I remember watching, different people that I used to follow and they'd post something saying, the 5 things I did to do something. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited to see what it is. What is it? Because then I can do what they
This will
did.
be the,
This is going to be the answer. And then it's like, move your body, like put down the phone. Or it's something that I never wanted to hear. It was like,
yeah.
no, like I want a different thing. It's like, no,
Yeah.
doll. Honestly, it all comes down to this nervous system regulation and
Mm-hmm.
sleep health and all the things that I'm sure we all talk about and the
Yeah.
people in this beautiful podcast know. And that's
Slow,
exactly the
sustainable
same.
progress.
Yeah, that's the same thing when it came to my ADHD and drinking.
Mm.
It was kind of the same. I didn't need to do more. I didn't need to take another pill. I didn't need another supplement. I needed to do less.
I mean, I want to talk for a second about like environmental factors because obviously that has a huge impact and huge implications for people's capacity to change. And something I talk a lot about with the long gamers and we reflect on a lot in check-ins and on calls is whether or not your environment is supporting you to make those changes. Because if your environment isn't conducive to change, if the people around you aren't wanting to change with you, and the example I always give is like, if the people around you make fun of people who are healthy and fit and focused, they make fun of people who go to the gym, they make fun of people who get up early or make fun of people who don't want to drink, this can make it so much harder. And it actually makes it feel unsafe from a nervous system perspective, from a subconscious perspective. And if it feels unsafe to you, you're going to subconsciously sabotage. You are going to not do the work and you're going to sit there wondering, why can't I show up for the changes I want to make? But
Mm.
if your environment isn't safe for you to do so, then you're not going to. And I gave up drinking for an entire year in 2014, right
How did you
after.
feel after that? How did you feel like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? Were you just like,
It was amazing. And it was the first time I'd ever in my adult life, I got my Sundays back. I was so much more productive on the weekends. But I did notice that people got really challenged by those decisions. No one else in
mm,
their early 20s or their mid 20s was stopping drinking. And I would find that I would go out and firstly, I had to deal with the anxiety of not having a drink in my hand and not having that little dampening of my nerves first up as soon as I got to an event. But I also noticed that people were really challenged, and a couple of drinks in, they'd be saying, "Oh, well, I don't usually drink this much." And I'd be like, "Hang on, I didn't ask you how much you drank." Or I actually this is pretty rare for me. And then a couple of more drinks in, it would be like, "Well, who do you think you are to bloody, you just think you're so good. Just have a fucking drink. Just have a fucking drink. Far out. Like, I just asked you about the weather and you had a full blown meltdown because I'm not
They're so
drinking."
triggered. They're so triggered though, I think. That's a projection for sure.
Absolutely.
And your environment is absolutely so important when it comes to any kind of growth or change that you're trying to make. Be that your physical environment, your home, the people you surround yourself with, your online environment.
Mm.
Environment's actually like one of my steps in my protocol, so to speak. When I would see my family in Adelaide and I would go to my dad would drink heaps. Everyone drunk. It was so normal. Australians love to drink. It is very, very normal. And you are definitely weird and strange if you're the one who doesn't want to drink.
Yeah.
And fuck that. I hope that I can change that. I hope to be part of that change. But in terms of environment, you need to reduce the friction. You've got to reduce the friction between here and where you want to be. And so if it's not drinking alcohol, well, firstly, you definitely don't want to have any alcohol in the house. My partner still drinks and he's never been a heavy drinker, and he's definitely partied and drinks and, gets drunk, but he's never relied on alcohol the way I did. I was drinking glasses of wine every night by myself, having a cigarette out the back, and he would be inside cooking me dinner. So he's never drunk a lot, but in terms of your environment, you've got to reduce the friction, and also you've got to know what your triggers are. So me, my triggers are a sunny day.
That's really interesting because when you speak to that, that's like in NLP, we would call that an anchor. So like it's a something physical or something that you experience that then is emotionally tied or connected to a way of being, which is
Yes.
like a nice sunny day is something that triggers that thought of like, "Ooh, it'd be really nice to have a drink right now."
And I moved from I know that I now will never rely on alcohol in terms of emotionally. Like I used to drink a lot when I was sad or I was emotional or I was stressed. Now I would never turn to that. Instead, now I think the things that I have to be aware of is when I go out for lunch or for dinners with my friends or my partner, and you're at a really beautiful restaurant or you're just at a really, great spot like a pub or the whatever, and you just think, God, this particular drink would be really nice right now. Those are probably the hardest moments for me. But I'm now at a point where I don't do that very often, to be honest. I just don't put myself in situations where I know that it's going to be difficult for me. And the people around you are really important. And somehow I've ended up surrounding myself with a lot of people who don't drink. Recently, I've met somebody who is like become such a beautiful friend to me. And she is also on a very similar journey and doesn't drink. And a lot of my other friends have got kids and they're just not big drinkers. And so that's really helpful. If my friends were huge drinkers, I'd probably just not see them as much, if I'm honest, because it's more important to protect your peace and protect what you're trying to do rather
Absolutely.
than be put in a situation where it's a bit tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I really like when you speak to that emotional need for drinking. I mean, so many people who follow me here and, who have joined us in the long game, they see the best of me trying to set this great example. But there was definitely a time, I mean, right before I stopped drinking for the year, that time was right after my husband's sister passed away. And I was working as a social worker and in the very vicariously traumatizing world of child protection. There was one night where I drank an entire bottle of whiskey, and I'm a beer and wine drinker. Like maybe a tequila shot on a fancy, fancy wedding or something like that.
Yeah.
G&T,
Mm.
maybe. But I drank a bottle of whiskey at home by myself
Ooh.
when my husband was away on a trip. And I remember waking up this is a side that no one in this world would know of me, but this is back in 2013. I woke up on the floor in front of the heater in my fancy social worker clothes,
Oh my gosh.
half drunk, half hungover at 2 o'clock in the morning, and remember thinking to myself, like, wow, I guess this is not really where I saw myself. And I think it was in that moment decided, okay, it was like around November towards the end of the year. And I set myself this goal of like, come January 1st, I'm not going to drink for an entire year. And that emotional side of things, like what you've mentioned around like something happening and that being the trigger to like, I need a drink. And we see that so much culturally. Like it's so normalized to be like, had a tough day, God, I need a drink. But I set myself that goal and had to then for the next 12 months actually process my emotions, actually process how I felt about Sophie's death, actually process what it felt like to be technically the support person because it was Nathan's sister, but she was also
Mm,
my best friend. So I was
mm,
constantly like pushed to this place of like everyone asking me how he's going and finally having to start talking about like how I was going and how I needed support. But without that year off, I think I would have very easily kind of drugged myself into oblivion and just tried to numb the pain away. And I think that's what a lot of women, especially mothers, when that mummy wine culture is normalized, are numbing the pain of feeling a loss of identity, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they don't have the support, feeling like they've lost their community or they've lost their friends. What was it like for you? Obviously, we spoke to the realizing you didn't want to drink, but what was it like for you then trying to embark on the motherhood journey as a neurodivergent woman without alcohol?
it was really hard to start with and huge. And it is something that I think a lot of women are very, very hesitant to admit.
Mm,
And that's fine. No shame, no judgment. It takes a lot to get to the point of even becoming curious about your habits.
mm-hmm.
And
Takes a lot to look at your habits.
right. And, at the end of the day, no one wants to feel like shit. No one wants to
Mm,
feel hungover. No one wants to feel like they're not enough, like they are lonely, like that, all those things that you feel when you pick up a drink.
mm,
And that's what alcohol does. It numbs that. And, as we said, it completely disassociates you from reality. And like I mentioned, I didn't want that anymore for me and my daughter and our relationship. And I felt like I had gotten past the I'm so emotional, I need a drink. But then it was this different angle of I now have a baby and I'm fucking stressed because I don't
mm,
know what I'm doing. I'm a new mother. I'm tired, et cetera, et cetera. And so it would come to Friday. My partner would be at work, Monday to Friday. And, I was excited. For me, it became a different ritual. It wasn't because I was emotional or I was upset. I was so happy, but I was a bit stressed. I was a bit tired. And I just felt like, you know what? I deserve it. There's
mm,
this culture around it's like, not only do you use alcohol when it's negative or sad situations, it's a celebration.
mm,
You got a job offer, whatever it could be, people use it to celebrate and people use it because they think I deserve it. I did such a good job at something. And so then that is what I had to work on a lot.
mm,
Another part is it was a connection that me and my partner had. It was
mm,
something that we did together and it was something that for the most part, we had a lot of fun doing together. We would shoot the shit, talk, have fun, put music on, sit in the spa. We did a lot of that when we were first together. And as the relationship continued, it was something that we did. We were so connected through alcohol. So I had to work really hard on feeling like I could, honestly, this is going to sound crazy, but that I could get through a weekend with him sober.
mm.
Like we could just have a good time. And it was a bit weird and a bit awkward. I'm not going to lie. At the beginning, it felt weird. We'd never really done this before. Like we'd never really been, like we had been sober together, but that is huge. And it was hard. It was really hard. The story is that when I decided I want to stop drinking quite seriously, I stopped drinking wine and champagne. And I started drinking a different alcoholic drink to start with, but it was vodka, soda water, lemon lime bitters, Sprite, no sugar, and like a lime. So it was like this fun, really refreshing, fresh drink it had vodka in it. And I would drink that and I would feel a lot different because obviously wine has a very different effect on you versus having
Mhm.
a Belvedere vodka with soda water in it. Like, it was just completely different. And then slowly it just felt like a normal drink to me. Like, it just felt like there wasn't even any alcohol in it. And then eventually I ditched the vodka and I just started using that as my non-alcoholic drink. And next thing you know, I'm not really drinking anymore. And I
Mm.
would have drinks here and there when I would go out to lunch or dinner or something, and it would be maybe one or two. And then I got to the point where I was like, oh, I can do this. I can be one of those people that have a drink here and there and it's all good.
Mhm.
But
I can
then,
stop if I want to.
yeah, but then I realized I don't actually think I want to do that. And so that's where this sober curious part of it kind of came in. But, being a new mum, I get it. I get why women who are new mums drink. I
Mm.
get it. I get it. Especially, I have a really supportive partner. Like, he is an incredible, supportive person in terms of the household and cooking and cleaning and doing all the things. Like, I'm very lucky, bare minimum in my eyes, to be honest, but he does it and he's great. But there are some women out there who are doing everything in the house
Yeah.
and looking after their kid. So I get that at the end you want that wine.
Mm.
I get it. There's a lot to do. It's so layered, not drinking. It's not just
Yeah.
throw out the alcohol and journal and, go for walks when you want to have a drink. No, it's like there's so many layers to it, and it is a full-time job to be sober or to drink less and to make those informed, intentional decisions. And
Mhm.
it takes a lot of, like we were saying before, going inward, being quiet and relying on yourself, because at the end of the day, you only have yourself. It's only you who can be sober or drink less.
Yeah. And that is so uncomfortable. And it's the internal discomfort why we drink
So
in the first
uncomfortable.
place, is to quiet that discomfort or to push away those feelings or to not experience those feelings. But I mean, I'm sure you agree. For me, I mean, my relationship with alcohol now, after I didn't drink for a year, I mean, that was 10 years ago. There was the time between then and having my baby or getting pregnant. I didn't ever go back to drinking the way I had. And for me to have a blowout or I was in a not a dissimilar place of, prior to stopping, I would drink to blackout,
Mm.
especially when I became a social worker and I started seeing shit that I'd never seen before.
And that stuff is out of your control as well
Absolutely.
when you're
Absolutely.
experiencing what I'm sure was just incredibly difficult stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after not drinking for that year, I never went fully back to that place of, having blackouts, but I still relied on alcohol a lot in terms of social, just like self-soothing in social
Mm.
events
Yep.
and supporting myself to kind of feel as though I was fitting in or not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to look different. And then it wasn't until, so I was sexually assaulted in 2017, my boss and a mentor that I had. And that happened after about 12 hours of drinking, then was, I want to say offered ketamine, but when you offer someone something when they're like borderline blackout drunk and they accept it, it's not exactly like a consent situation. Yeah. And so for me now, drinking post that, I still carry a lot of trauma from that situation. And it's why I love the term that you've spoken to. I'd never heard sober curious until I heard you say that.
Mm.
But for me, I drink at home. Like, I'll have a beer at home with dinner to be honest, once every couple of weeks. Like, we really don't drink much in our household. We used to be that bottle of wine a couple of
Mm.
nights a week, family. But after that experience, I drink so much less. And if I go out, so for example, I've got a networking event, I'm going up to the Gold Coast on the 2nd of December, and I know there's going to be cocktails, there's going to be drinks, it's going to be like this very fancy affair. But for me, it's like I do not drink in social settings like that. I might have something when I arrive, but then I'm on the water because there is still trauma around being out of control.
Not
I
in
guess it comes
control.
down to being out of control and not having my awareness, not having my faculties, feeling like it's my responsibility to keep myself safe. Because, when you get assaulted by someone who is someone that you trust, which is by and large what most women experience, it's not the scary,
Man
stranger
behind
in
the
the
tree.
dark. Yeah, 2/3 of women are assaulted by someone that they know. That has left a really big impact on me and my relationship with alcohol and just never letting my guard down. essentially.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. That is so fucked up. And the not wanting to lose control or feel, it's not even, for me it's like feeling not in control
Mhm.
of my thoughts, my feelings, how I move. It's
Mhm.
all of those things. And it is ironic because that's kind of the thing that we liked beforehand. We liked that we weren't in control and we were just loose and having fun and, whatever. There was no responsibility, no nothing. Like, I used to love getting drunk. I used to love it. But now I don't like the feeling.
Mm.
I do not like the feeling. It's, Penelope is my daughter and she's 18 months old now. It's, how old is you've got a son?
He's 4.
He's 4, 18-month-old, you know what it's like. They're insane. It's crazy. The house is a mess. It's full on. I can't, I'm now at a point where I'm so regulated without alcohol that I know how much even one drink will disrupt that regulation or that space that
Yeah.
I'm in where I'm very regulated and where I am in control. So for me, it's not worth it. Also, it's full of sugar. You feel like absolute crap. It affects your sleep. Even if you have one drink, it will affect your sleep. It's a cost that I'd prefer to keep. I'd prefer to keep the 30, 40, $50 or however much it is. There's so many ways you can flip it to be it's not worth it.
Oh, there's so many people who could afford long game if they didn't drink.
Oh my God, there you go. Shout out to all those people listening if you know
Yeah.
who you are. And also touching on what you so terribly went through when it comes to alcohol, I know that alcohol isn't the reason that these terrible things happen, but alcohol leads to, again, in my experience, alcohol leads to taking other drugs. Other drugs lead to other things. And
Yeah.
so it all snowballs,
Well, it heightens your tolerance for risk, and you're so much more comfortable with
exactly. And
taking big
already,
risks.
and as someone who is neurodivergent, we are already big risk takers and we are already impulsive as fuck. So impulsive. It could be a Thursday, a Tuesday at 11 a.m. and someone could be like, want to go here and do this? I'd be like, hell yeah, I do. Like,
Babe, in 2019, someone was like, "Do you want to go to Canada and work in 3 weeks?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool, no worries." Hey,
I did the
husband, I'm
same.
going to Canada for 5 months.
My friend was like, hey, do you want to go to Coachella in April? And I was like, yep. And then I went to Coachella and whilst I had the best time, I took way too many drugs in America. And when I came back, I had like a full kidney infection. I was so unwell. But yeah, you're impulsive. So the drinking heightens all of those things and
Mhm.
it's not worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the thing, and I guess there might be women listening to this wanting to understand a bit more about what it means to be sober curious or realizing that they are actually a little bit sober curious, and I really like what you said at the start. It reminded me of a lot of the things we think about in terms of food. You're either vegan or you're not vegan. You're gluten-free or you're not gluten-free. You drink or you don't drink. And what do you think if someone is suddenly listening to this, realizing, oh, I can sit somewhere in the middle?
Mm.
How do you learn what's right for you? Or how did you learn what was right for you?
So I did mention before really quickly that I really wanted to be this person who could, for the most part, not drink. But
Mm,
then when I wanted to have a glass of wine or a nice glass of champagne, I could do that.
mm,
And so I tried that for a little bit. And I got to the point where I was like, all right, if I'm not going to drink and I'm just going to have a couple of drinks here and there, the first thing I kind of set some boundaries around it. I was like, it's going to be either at home and it's going to be a really nice bottle of champagne or a really nice bottle of wine that I like. It isn't going to
mm,
be, I'm going to go to the pub and have a schnitty and get one of the free glasses of rosé that you get with it. Hell no. If I'm going to not drink, it's going to be some top shelf shit. So
yeah.
then it was like, cool. We would start buying, my partner was like, yeah, that sounds good. That's awesome. You don't have to just be sober. And so he'd go and buy me really nice bottles of champagne and I'd have a few glasses and it was all nice and fine. But then I'd feel really shitty afterwards, and not just shitty because I wasn't hungover, but I started to overthink and I
Mm,
started to feel like a bit guilty. And there's not to say that that's bad, not to say that you feel bad and guilty so you shouldn't drink. But for me, it just was not aligning anymore. So I am sober. I say that I'm sober like that. I'm currently sober and the plan is for me to be sober, but I don't want there to be this label that gets put on people so that when they do crash out, they feel terrible. I think that a lot of people are sober curious, but I just think that they don't realize. And look, the term sober curiosity or being sober curious isn't something I made up. It's really just about if you think you're sober curious, you probably are. And basically, it is really just you wanting to make more informed,
Mm.
intentional decisions about your drinking. And the whole reason that I started wanting to talk about this is because when I was in that middle part where I was like, I don't want to drink anymore, but I kind of want to have a drink here and there. I like the idea that I could call myself sober, but I'm not sober.
Yeah.
And I think that there needs to be more grace and there needs to be more support for women who are in this middle part
Mm.
because we don't need to talk in absolutes all the time. And saying you're not sober, you are sober, or you're 300 days sober. I also don't like to count days. I understand why it's there, but I think that it's just really important that we create spaces for women who are curious about being sober and
Yeah.
just congratulate them and hold them and see them. Because even just getting to that decision of thinking, I think I want to drink less, but I don't see a lot of support out there for those women. And that's what I want to do. That's what I do. And that should be celebrated that you're even thinking about it.
Yeah, amazing. And I know you don't necessarily have an offering now, but what's the idea for when you do start working in this space?
So I actually am about to release my offers over the next 7 days. So look, I will be offering one-on-one coaching. There will be a couple of different options in terms of how long you want to do that support. And then there is a whole lot of work that we do, but I'm a very action based kind of person in terms of we can unpack and we can pull back layers and we can understand why and look at your limiting beliefs and do shadow work. But a lot of it is to do with, we touched on, setting up your environments for success and then action. And I like to call it like disciplined action. Some people call it like aligned action when you talk about things that you're wanting to do in terms of achieving your goals, but it really comes down to a lot of discipline and actually making moves. Those
Mhm.
physical changes that you make in your life, as small as they are, make a huge impact on what happens next. And
Amazing. So finally, the podcast is aptly named Disgustingly Easy because that's the message behind everything we do at Long Game Central. Essentially, it doesn't matter where you're at. I believe that there's always somewhere that you can start from. We just have to make it disgustingly easy for ourselves. So, for
yes,
someone who is drawn to the idea of sobriety and drinking less alcohol, what would you say would be a disgustingly easy way for them to take that first step?
I would say the first step would be to tell the person who you live with that that's what you want to do. And in whatever way that looks like, and ask for their support, whatever way that might be. That might not be them not drinking as well, but it could be that they don't drink in the house with you. So, close proximity, who you are around the most, we touched on this at the beginning, is so important. And so, just making them very aware, setting that intention, speaking it out loud that that's what you want to do, and just asking for their support. The next thing I would say is to remove all alcohol from your house. And the next thing that I think is pretty easy is to focus on your physical movement
Yeah.
because a lot of this will come down to your mental health, your nervous system regulation, the voice in your head, all of that noise. And if you're moving your body on a regular basis, you are in a much clearer headspace.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
those would be my first like top 3 tips.
So, basically, join the long game and
Basically, join the long game.
amazing.
And physical movement, as you know, is the best thing for so many things. And honestly, it's been a huge part of why I think I can be sober.
Yeah, I think it helps renegotiate relationships with your body and what your
Mhm.
body is capable of and ways you can be proud of your body and ways you can see your body do things that are maybe unrelated to how it performs for other people, how it shows up for other people. And it's all to do with how you relate to yourself. So moving and exercising and doing that kind of thing, I think is just so underrated in terms of personal and professional development.
It's very underrated. It's honestly one little last thing I wanted to say was, which
Mm.
you just kind of touched on, is the idea that we can do things we never thought we could do. So, like for me, that
Mm.
was drinking. And by just committing to those small promises that you say to yourself every day.
Mm,
Whatever it is, if you can stick to those little promises each day, you compound, you have all these little pieces of evidence that
yeah,
you can do the things that you say you're going to do. So then when you say, I want to drink less, you're like, I can probably do that because I did all those other things I said I could do.
exactly.
And so you've just got to keep those promises to yourself. And yeah,
It compounds the evidence that it's possible. Amazing. So, Lauren, thank you so much. Such grounded wisdom to this space today. I think so many women listening are going to recognize themselves in your story in that like quiet questioning of whether or not this drinking is taking me closer to my goals or further away from them. It takes bravery to make change in a world that normalizes mothers and women's burnout, normalizes numbing, normalizes coping mechanisms more than it normalizes women's growth. And so, if this episode has stirred up something for you, whether that's a curiosity about your own relationship with alcohol or simply a reminder that you're allowed to redefine what wellness and connection look like, take this as your sign to slow down, to listen, to reach out. You can find Lauren over on Instagram, and I will link her info in the show notes. And if you loved this episode, let's keep the conversation going over on Instagram. Post your stories about what your biggest takeaway was and let more people know that it is okay to start questioning, start showing up differently, and maybe practicing a little bit of sober curiosity. And if you're not already a part of the long game and love the conversations like this, then jump into my DMs with the word ready, because this is where the real magic happens. In the long game, you receive real-time support and accountability, not just from me, but from our incredible community. You can access evidence-based fitness and nutrition, so you're always knowing what to do, whether it's in the gym or the kitchen. And day in, day out, we are working on creating that black belt mindset, prioritizing growth and personal development. And all you need to do to start that conversation is DM me with the word ready. And I will step out a 12-month personalized plan just for you to take you from where you are to exactly where you wanted to go inside of 12 months. Because the long game, as always, is about learning, leading, living in alignment, even when it looks different to what the world expects. So until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your boundaries. And remember, when nothing is certain, anything is possible. You've got this and we've got you. Lauren, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys soon.